Welcome to class number 3 of Build an App for Fun. Today we're going to build a wonderful calculator. Why a calculator? It's simple enough, everybody knows how to use it, but it has enough action that will teach us a lot of information during this class. Today we're going to start with the layouts, and layouts is just a way for us to organize the data. If we started with, just as an example, we're not going to use this one, but if we started with horizontal layout, essentially every widget that we grab becomes aligned in a horizontal way, one next to the other. If we delete this guy and all the children and we went back to the layout and now we did a vertical arrangement layout, in this case we would see that everything that we added buttons, everything is added. Even if I wanted to put it like right next to here, it just keeps adding them next to each other. So that's the vertical alignment. There are a couple of other alignments in here. Horizontal, just want to show these ones that have the scroll arrangement in both vertical and horizontal. Because when we were working earlier with a horizontal and we filled in the space, it didn't do anything else with the information that we had. So we add now, in this case, let's add a fourth button and we go into the emulator. Start our emulator. So now that we have this, we can scroll our application, as opposed to if we were doing the regular horizontal scroll arrangement. If we did again the traditional one, and let's just with failed parent, so that way it's fully there, and we add 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we go back here, you can see that there's nothing really where we can go and do anything about it. You know, like this button was packed right here on with the little space that it's left. So that is basically layouts for us. And layouts, again, allow us to arrange our data, our information. So in the case of a calculator, we can see that there's two things. And I'm going to put my whiteboard right here and my calculator right here. So you can see that there is a main box that is created. That's the entire application. And then there is another division. So this is basically arrangement, and in here we have a grid. Just the fact that it's divided like that, it's giving us a real important clue. So I'm gonna go for the vertical arrangement layout, and then I'm going to pick a label in here, and this is gonna be, we're gonna rename it, we're gonna call it our display. And then we're going to also, in the lower part, because we just created that, we're going to create a table arrangement. And in here we can see in our calculator that it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5 by 4. So it's got 4 columns, 5 rows. And we're going to make it fill the parent in both cases. And now we're going to start putting the numbers that we need. In this case, it's 4. We're going to put another one here, and then another one here, and then another one here. But what we're going to do is that we're going to actually, I'm going to avoid, I don't want to do these two guys because right now it's just would extend the video too long. So I'm going to skip these two guys and just squeeze this guy in here. So I'm going to change the layout just a little bit, just a slight thing. So I'm going to remove one of the rows. So it's going to be 4 rows in reality. And then this guy is going to be number 7. This, and then we're going to rename this guy to 7. I'm putting names here of the numbers. Then and this one I'm going to put number 8, and I'm going to rename it to 8. I'm going to make this one 9 and rename it to 9. I know I can only name it to numbers. In these cases, actually, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, actually, let's just, we're gonna go for number 4, and we're gonna rename it to 4. We're gonna grab this guy here and rename it to 5. And you can see how immediately, as soon as I renamed, like put all the elements in the column to be that width, it immediately collapsed it. Same thing for this guy here. I'm gonna make it 6, and it's gonna collapse that guy. It's just collapsing the size of the buttons. It's not collapsing the arrangement. You can see when I selected the green thing that is surrounding it is still using all that area. So this guy I'm gonna rename for 5. This guy I'm gonna rename for 6. This guy I'm gonna rename for 1. I'm gonna add another button, calling in 2. And then I'm gonna add another button, and then this guy I'm gonna rename it to 3. Rename to 3. 4, I'm gonna add a 0, and I'm gonna add all of our operations here. We're gonna make it divide by. I'm gonna append, just for proper nomenclature, an OP for knowing that it's the divide operation. I'm gonna make this one here, and I'm gonna put it in an X, and then we're gonna put mult OP. Then this guy I'm gonna put it here as minus. It's gonna be the text that I'm gonna display, and then this guy I'm gonna put it minus OP, and I'm gonna add another one here. Then I'm gonna add the plus, and then rename plus OP. This guy I'm gonna put a C for 0. Actually, let's separate it just so that it's a little bit more like this. Now, also another thing that I want to do with this guy is that I want this to fit in correctly. So we've got, if it's just by using the calculator that we have here, we have 100% divided by 4. It's going to be 25% of the entire thing. I mean, just to verify for you guys, 100 divided by, it's 4. So 100 divided by 4, it's 25. So we're going to change all these guys to automatic width of 25%. And then same thing with this guy, 25%, then 25%, and these guys, same thing, 25%. Feels a little tight, so I'm going to start changing them to 23%, all of these columns, just so that it doesn't feel as tight. Let's see if 23% does it. I don't think it's moving much, so I may actually go all the way down to 20%. And then this guy's gonna go into 20%. Yeah, it feels a little better. Oh, this guy was 0. See, and then we're gonna name it reset. Oh, we forgot one really important one. The equals. And I'm gonna rename this button for equals. Then we're gonna make it this guy because it's 1. This is like, I don't know, maybe like 30% of the entire application, or like 40. Let's go for like 25%. Yeah, I think we should do also the buttons a little bit bigger. Let's make them, these guys, the height, let's make them also 20%, so that they're a calculator for people like me that can't see without glasses. Let's make them 20%, 20% by 20%, yeah. Notice that I'm only doing the top row and the bottom row, but I gotta fill in everything else then on the height. So we're gonna call this guy the height, it's gonna be 20%. 20%. Actually, let's go for more like 15%. And this guy's gonna go for like 15%. And then this guy's gonna go for like 15%. And then this is gonna go for like 15%. Oh, this is width. This is 20. There you go. Starting to feel a little bit better. I can probably do something like this. Let's experiment. If I command click and then I do multiple here, and I'm gonna do 20%. Oh, it was 15% if I remember correctly. There you go. Now we have a much better looking calculator. But if I'm going to also make sure that all these guys are properly done, I'm gonna make these guys a little bit bigger, the font, and then I'm gonna make it like, I don't know, font bold, and then 25%. Now we have something that looks a little bit better. And now I'm gonna go for this. Also, I want to change the background color to orange, and for these guys I'm gonna make it so that I can change them to a dark color. So we're gonna change these to a gray, and I would love the font of these to be white. So now we have something that looks more like this. This guy, the label, we're gonna put this guy initial value at 0, and we're gonna make it bold, and we're gonna make it 25 points. No, let's go for higher. Let's go for 35 points. Let's go exaggerated. 70 points. There you go. Actually, maybe bold is not the right idea, but maybe we can change the entire width of this to fill the parent, and we can change the, let's see how it would look so that we can match this guy. I'm going to change also the alignment to be on the right, so that way it looks like our calculator here. And also, because right now if I go into the emulator, it's starting to look like that other calculator. I think we could be playing around with it a little bit longer and make it perfect, but for right now, this is it. We have our layout, we have our application, it's looking great. So then maybe one of the things that we should do, now that also everything is renamed, one thing to do is to think about what are the things that the calculator needs to keep in mind. And every time, when we started the calculator, it starts with a number 0. And that's whatever the display is. But in reality, when you start the calculator, we should go in here into our, where's our QuickTime? Here it is. When you start a calculator, there is a memory, and then there's going to be a display. And in the display, one thing is what you do with the memory. The memory is like 0 at this point, but if I start changing the number, that's changing the display to that 33232. What is in memory is the operation of that. If I press plus, it's essentially resetting this guy to be the initial value, plus then we can put whatever number, I don't know. This is now the memory. Whenever we press plus, it sends this number to the memory. So the memory is now 33232, and the display is the same. But the moment after we play press, then we can start typing, I don't know, another number like 456. So if we did in the calculator 456 and then performed, I don't know, the equals, then essentially is performing the operator that you had before, the memory, and the display. So basically every time that we press the operator, we're adding that operator as a global value and pushing whatever was on the display into the memory. And then whenever we do, and then applying that operation. So In short, we have three global variables: the operator, which is whatever operation that we're going to do, the display, which is whatever you were typing before, and the memory, which is whatever you had generated. So if we go into the blocks, we have to initialize those three variables. So I'm going to create those variables and I'm going to put them right here. One is going to be called the memory. The other one is going to be the display. And then the last one, I'm going to call it OP for operator. And I'm going to set up basic values on these guys because right now we're having two warnings. That right now when I press show or hide warnings, it shows the display here. So if we click here, we can see that you should feel all the sockets in the block. It's telling us that we need to do something about it. So between the operator and the display value, I'm going to put them as empty text, and the memory, I'm going to grab it as a 0. This is going to represent our application. The other thing that we have to do is, if we look at this area, we gotta have a mechanism for us to perform a math operation by having number A, and then we're gonna have an operation, and B it's another number that we're gonna perform an operation, and that's what we're then going to store. Or at the very least, if we want to abstract it even more and separate it even more, at this point we're going to say that this is what we're going to process. And what we're going to process in here is whatever operations that we have. That these operations could be plus, minus, divide by, multiply by, and what else did we have? Let's see what. No, it's only two operations. I mean, it's only 4 operations. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a function that will handle that. We're essentially going to give it a mechanism that it's going to be able to read those values and perform such operation. One thing to put in this calculate thing, I'm going to abstract it to the point that it doesn't know anything of the UI. It'll just know there's 2 numbers and an operator. So I'm going to create 1, 2 numbers, and an operator. Right now this function will have everything that it needs on its own. So I'm going to call this one as, actually let's put this one in the middle, and X, Y, and operator. So basically the function will be reading calculate, 3 plus 2, calculate 3 minus 1. The OP is going to be a string because that's what we have it here, and that's essentially what I plan to pass. But if we want to return a value, we need to start evaluating what operation we're going to start doing. So because we're going to be evaluating if the value equals a plus or a minus or something like that, we need to understand that and evaluate it. So in this case, we're going to say if the operator, and we're going to use the logic tab for comparing 2 values. So we're going to say if the operator equals plus, then we would return, where did I put it? I moved it. I would return X plus Y. Very simple. If the operator equals plus, then we need to return X plus Y because that's what we're going to try to do. Then the next thing is we're going to continue essentially doing the same thing for every single operation. We're going to verify, and we're going to, rather than copying and dragging everything, we can right click here and we can get extra options like add a comment, external inputs, collapse a block. Collapsing the block is something like this, that essentially makes it into something smaller. But if you click expand, it goes back to where it used to be. So I'm gonna duplicate this guy and change this so that if the operator now is a minus, then we return, where's the minus in here? Right here. And we copy the X and we copy the Y. Then else we're going then into the control, and we do the same thing. We can duplicate this guy, plug it in here. We're gonna put the X because that's what we have on this side. It's an uppercase. Is it an uppercase X? Yes, it is. So we're gonna match it, and also then add another one that will give us another if else block, and duplicate, and do the division. By the way, this is just the way that I'm coming up with a solution, but in the programming world, there's many ways to come to a solution. So if you have your own idea of how you would have solved it, give it a try. Definitely give it a try. Try to practice, because this is a muscle. This is something that is not something that you were born with. I've been programming since I was 6 years old, so I have many years of experience, so it comes as a second nature to me, but this is in reality a muscle. I've seen people that learned how to program, and they, work their way through that. But also a bunch of things that I did see was people that would defeat themselves and say, no, I'm never going to be a programming, I can't do this. No, this is not the case. You can do this. I'm trying to explain all this code in as simple as possible, and in sometimes quite ugly code, to help everybody understand, because it's designed to help everybody understand the logic of programming. If I did it with a super time complexity thing, it would discourage people unnecessarily. So by all means, try different algorithms, try different things that make sense to your brain. Not everybody's brain is exactly the same, so what makes sense to me might not make sense to you. What makes sense to you might not make sense to me. And that's the beauty of diversity. We all think differently. We all have different perspectives. Anyway, let's see. We're gonna do the same idea, and then we're gonna do, if it's a division, then we're gonna do the same thing, X and Y. And then here, you might be wondering, why did I leave a value that like that? Why didn't I just put this under the else? Because there's certain situations where you're not really performing an operation, and for example, like pressing the C or things like that. The last portion here returns you the value that is in memory, as long as we pass it correctly. Because, for example, equals would be another operation. To tell it, do not do any more operations, just display the value. So we have our calculate variable, and the other thing that I want to do is, for example, if I let's start with it, just to put the number 7 as an example. I'm gonna drag it here, and if I was just going to say, oh well, it's very simple. Every time that I press the number 7, I will display I would set the display to be 7, and set display text 2. Now we're gonna set it up as, we're gonna just say 7 here. So if I did 7, but if I press 7 so many times, it has a very different behavior than here. It's appending 7s rather than setting the display. And I don't want to have to do the code for all the buttons that I have. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a nice method called number was pressed. So I'm going to create my own procedure here. And this one I don't need a return value because I'm not doing anything. So number was pressed. that I am going to call in here. But also I need to know what number was pressed. So in the case of this beauty, I'm going to switch the 7 in here, and in here I'm gonna connect the 7 if I wanted to. Right now, you know, I can do something very simple like this, and then I'm gonna type a number 8 and press it and call the number was pressed with this guy here. And right now, because it's wired the old way, I can switch between 7 and 8 because I'm wiring it the old way. I'm still not concatenating the value. Concatenating means putting one value right after the other. What I am going to do is that I'm going to get the display value from here. I'm going to try to get that, and I'm going to also create a local variable that I'm going to change this for. Do I even need that? No, I don't need a local variable. Let's just put it all directly. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to mix by using the join function in the text tab here. I go into the join function, and I am going to get the value, and then I am going to concatenate it with the value that I am sending. And I'm going to, let's go into set display value. Oh, yeah, we're going to change this to display the value, but we want to change the display value to this new number. So we're essentially passing it here, where we're first setting getting the number that we were storing in the display. We're gonna get that value and add the value of the key that we're pressing, and then we are going to set it as a display value, and then also reflect the changes on the UI. We're telling the UI after we grabbed. Let me re-explain it in a slightly different way. If I had number 7 as a display value, and I then press the number 7 again, this guy is going to grab these two values and put the first 7, and then let's change these numbers so that way it's not as confusing. Let's change it for an 8. And then we press the 7, now it's adding it at the very end, which is grabbing the value that was from the global and then joining it with the new value that we have. So I can start doing this and changing it to 4. Then the number 5, duplicate, change it to number 5, 6, duplicate, change it to number 6, 1, duplicate, change it to number 1. I'm gonna duplicate it, change it to number 0, and we have 3 more numbers, 9, 2, and 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. Notice how I am going through each one of these guys and verifying that I am covering all the numbers when I am pressing them. That means that now I'm going to test what I just did, which is something really important whenever you're developing any software. 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 0. Perfect. So now we have all the arrangements for our numbers to be pressed and responding in the same way. Okay, let's move our code. Then we need a way for us to perform our operations. in a consistent way. In the same way that you can see that I am reusing the same code, if I change this code, it affects everyone. So the same way that I did this, I got to do it for the buttons that we have. So we're going to start adding the operations down here also. Minus, plus, and equals. We also have reset. I'm going to put reset a little farther out because that one acts as a little bit different. But basically, what I need is to get the result from this, perform the operation, and send it into the memory, like we discussed earlier. So I'm going to create a new procedure called UI calculate, and I'm setting it up with a prefix of UI to not mix it with the other one. And I'm going to also set up an operator similar to what we did with the number was pressed function. And we're just going to say which operator was. This is for us to just figure out like what was the parameter, the operation that we are performing. We discussed in here that when we press the operation, the first thing to do is to set up the operator into the operator field, because if we do 3 plus, we still have not put the next value, so we got to store the value of the operator. So when we do that, we should then set the value of the operator to this. Let's get it. Okay. Set up the global operator to our operator. So essentially we're setting that stored value to whatever we just pressed. That's what the first block says. Then we're going to try to perform an operation. Because of the way that we were sending it to the memory and performing the operation, we're going to set the value stored. Where is the memory? We're going to set this one. Set the memory to, we're going to call our calculator process. And you can see that there's also an important thing. When I'm leaving the empty operator, it will go right here. So it will just give me the value to set to the memory. That was also part of the trick of the equals. Why I didn't set it up as an equals, because I wanted to be able to retrieve that value at the if no operation was performed. The thing that I'm going to pass then is going to be the memory. That's what we're going to pass. Then in this guy, I'm going to get this global operator, because that's what we're setting it up to. Get global operator, just because of the way that we set up the function. Actually, I don't even, because of that, I'm going to set up the global operator to that, and then y is going to be the other value that we have, which is a display value. So we're going to get the display value. Once we do that, we're going to also update our display. So in the display here, we're gonna set. Notice that I'm doing UI operations only on things that have to do with the UI. Nowhere else in the code I am mixing, trying to get the table from the text or things like that. Everything is very isolated and very much contained within itself of what needs to be doing. In other words, let me just go in here. In other words, if you have a button and this thing is, you should not be referencing too many things across the application, because you will run the memory. You know, like if this is your entire function, this area in red is your function, and it's referencing all these different things outside. It's dangerous. So try to keep that code as contained as possible. That's why I'm doing it in only one function. So in this case, I'm also going to duplicate, because clone it, but I'm also going to change the value to the memory value. Then I'm going to also, after I perform that operator, actually we can even get rid of this, the other operator. Let's just, because we redesigned it very well, where we have the operation that we need, and that way it's only used in here. let's go and test. I want to reset it because, because I need to reset it. I'm gonna create the reset function just because I wanna make sure that I'm gonna create this procedure. I'm gonna call it reset app. Well, just reset. It's gonna be general. I'm going to essentially get all these guys. No, actually, sorry. No, it's not this guy. It's the get. It's the set that I want. I want to reset all these guys to the original values. The globals, I'm gonna set them to, and then I'm going to create text, and we're gonna move this block down to our reset area. And after we did that, then we gotta set the display to the global memory. And now in here, we can call reset. And now, when we press the 0, now it resets things. So now let's finally test our 3 plus 2 plus 5. Uh-oh, something is going on that we need to troubleshoot. So one of the things that we did not do in the UI calculate is at the very end, we need to change our display value to this. And now, let's zero it out, UI calculate, okay. So I would like to test this function without even going into the UI right now. So if I go into right click into the top of the function, I click do it, I can say that the operation, I should expect a 5 and the result is 5. What happens then if I go and do minus 5 minus 3? I would expect a 2, and it's telling me the result here in this thing. In this guy here, I can say that the value is 3. If I call it do it, I'm going to close the other calculator. If I do something like this, the entire procedure number was pressed, we're gonna press 1, and then it just appends the 1 in here. Then I want to troubleshoot why it's not happening. And there was me trying to troubleshoot something that is not being called. All these operations are not called at all. Just to reiterate, I did a change here. I set the display value to empty so that we don't concatenate too many values. So that way when you press the plus, it essentially resets the... Yeah, so actually I'm gonna move this guy on top, and then I'm essentially going to set the value to the display value, but I'm gonna remove it because at this point we already performed the calculation. So I'm just keeping the last value as a toy, to put it that way. And then I'm going to also call no, number was pressed. Well, we can reuse it and change it here, UI calculate, and we're going to set this guy here. And there I was, me trying to like run something, and it was just that it was not connected. That's like those instruction manuals that tell you the troubleshooting part is the power on. Okay, so this is plus, this is minus, this is mult, and the other one is division. So if I go into our operation now here, I'm gonna zero it out. 32 plus 5 equals something is wrong in here, and this is what I gotta figure out. But let's see if I did it 32 plus 5 plus 3 plus something is also wrong in here. We're probably setting the wrong values. So whenever I pressed here, this is the memory, this is the original thing that we have. Let's see, 3 plus 2 plus 3, something is not working. Something is disconnected from the UI calculate, guys. I'm going to do one little thing. Oh, yeah, this is where it was wrong. This is where it is also important to pay attention. I was using the global operator, but because I removed it, I introduced the problem. So now it's 3 minus 2 minus 5 equals, let's do the math, 1 plus 3 equals, something in that is a little wrong. Whenever I do the plus, there's something correct. So then there is something in my equals that I gotta change. And it's because the equals is not even a real math operator. So what I'm gonna change is the equals. I'm gonna put it in this other category. Actually, we should probably like make its own column with the two that are just for. This was a mistake to call it like that. So there's a tricky part here where if we go back to the original drawing that we have, where we had the memory, the display, and the operator. Initially, you start with both of these in display, like this, in 0, and this is an empty array. But at some point, you will press the number 3, and then you will press the number plus, and this is going to be waiting for a next operation. But what this thing is doing is that it's applying this guy with this guy. Let's put it as a ghost operation here. That's what it's going to try to do. Then the next time that we press that number 3, it's not going to do anything until we put another value on the display. The moment that we put the value on the display, let's say at 22, then this guy becomes the memory. Whatever the result, instead of point, because it will be confusing, and then it will be going into this display here. So it's going to go in, and it's say 3 no up versus plus 0. Let's even consider this if it was a plus, the initial one, then that's going to be stored as 3. So then the next time if we press 2 again, it will apply this operator with this memory back into the memory, and then it would put it as a 25, which is what also changes the display of what we were showing until we press another value. So it's doing little by little all that progression. So what we need to do is that we need to store. We were not storing. I took it off because I thought, I'm smarter than the system, and now I don't need that operator. But what I need to do is to set it up, that value, to whatever our initial operation was. So we're going to set the operator, We're going to set the operator to the value of this operator. We're going to perform the operation, and then that's how we're going to store that. Actually, we can probably even do this thing more like this. This is, I feel, a little bit more correct. And this guy, we're going to change it to global operator, because we're performing the operation of the previous step. So I'm grabbing whatever the operation is. And if I went without all these guys, just where we were at this point, where we perform that operation, and then later on, so we needed that previous stack, then update that operator to the new operator that we're going to do. So in this case, we're going to get the previous value, and then later, after we perform the operation, we're going to update it with whatever new operator that we are passing. So if we go into our emulator, we hit 0. So then we need to connect this guy, and I apologize because I confused everyone. UA calculate, and then we do this. So we can do now 3 plus 2 plus, which is performing the previous operation, 3 plus, so that now it's saying 5. It's a little confusing in this area, so we need to troubleshoot it. We were trying to troubleshoot what was going on with the app, because when we do 3 plus 2, it doesn't do anything in here. So That's okay. That's okay. Programmers a lot of times make mistakes while they are developing tools. The important thing is to have the tools and wisdom to navigate so that we understand what's going on. So what I'm going to do to really understand what's happening in this particular case, I'm going to change my table arrangement to 5 rows temporarily, because I'm going to add a few labels here to troubleshoot the situation. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to rename this one to debug 1, this guy to debug 2, and then this guy to debug 3. And I'm going to change all these guys to only have this information, just empties. And on the block side, I am going to create a function. The goal is to use those 3 devices for these 3 labels. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set debug text to, and I'm going to say it's going to go to memory, get global memory. I'm going to rename this procedure to debug. And I'm going to duplicate it, connect it, duplicate it, and connect it. And I'm going to set debug 2 to the next one, which is display value. And debug 3, we're going to set it to global operation. So now I have a function that is going to refresh those 3 values with whatever those 3 variables are. And hopefully that'll help me understand what I did wrong. So in here, I'm going to call my reset function every UI operation that I do. So for example, if I'm going to call reset in number was pressed, well, not in number was pressed, just in reset and the operations, because those are the ones that I suspect that something's wrong. Also, I want to check out where the warnings are. Something got disconnected here. There you go. Okay. So we're back. The emulator is now working. I had to reboot my machine. But what we got to do is that we also got to make sure that we call the debug function. So now if we do 3 plus, oh, this guy is debug 3 is, let me just troubleshoot it and make sure that the debug is debugged. Debug 2, debug 3, and debug 2. And in here, we're going to set up debug 1 to the text to whatever the value was for memory, the other one for the display, and the other one for the operation. So the display value, once we press this, maybe we should put it also on this guy. Let's just duplicate it and put it on all the functions that are calling the UI. So now if we have 3 plus 2, we're gonna see that 3, 2 plus, and we press equal. Let's just 3 plus 2. I pressed the 3 and it didn't change it. So when I did the first plus, that tells me that the initial value of the calculator, the initial operator, should always be a plus. And here's why. Again, let me do 3 plus. With the moment that I did the plus, it performed the previous operation, but it didn't do anything because I know I told you about this, but this guy, if you don't pass the operation, which is fine for the equals, it is not fine for the initial state. So what I gotta do is I gotta set up the initial operation to plus. That's gonna be our initial value. So now that it's reset, I'm gonna do 3 plus 2, 5. So when I do 6 times, it moves the 6 down here, and now I can say 2 and press equals, and now it's going to be 12. So it's performing the behavior that way, where by having the labels, I can actually see these values. And now that I know that I corrected this by having the right plus sign, I can go ahead and then take my entire function to the trash, and I mean, or just disconnect it, but in this case I wanted to have some clean code. And now I can also grab each one of these guys and remove them. And also switch back to the table and set it back to 4 rows. I think that the important thing in two important things are in this video: to demystify the fact that a programmer cannot make a mistake. Like, well, technically shouldn't make a mistake in the code, but as you're developing, there's some things that you're going to have wrong, and it's okay to troubleshoot. It's okay to have the tools to do that. The other things that we reviewed was the separation of the UI and the components, and also something important that was the layouts. So with this, we have a full simple calculator just running on your Android device. And I hope you found these valuable and useful, and I will be seeing you around. Thank you.